Darkstalkers. This is another Capcom property, so made by the same people that made Street Fighter. Uh, my esoteric trivia for this one was that Capcom wanted to just make a fighting game of the Universal monsters, like they straight up wanted to do Frankenstein and Dracula and Creature from the Black Lagoon, but they couldn't get the rights, so these are their royalty-free equivalents.
I see. I was not aware of this.
Yeah. Excuse me.
I have never played the Darkstalkers game.
Very neat. It's one of my it's another personal favorite of mine. It's kind of an interesting evolution from Street Fighter because the characters are very, very malleable. Whereas, like, if like not to say Street Fighter has bad art or animation, but the characters are a bit stiff, I suppose, if that makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
what you see is what you get. Whereas the Darkstalkers characters are borderline Looney Tunes. They stretch, they like have weird shape shifting and powers, and I've always really loved that look to it.
Has there been a Darkstalkers game, like a new Darkstalkers game, recently?
No,
Because I
they
did search for
really
one and I couldn't find
they
anything.
really squandered. They were like, okay, we'll release a Darkstalkers anniversary collection that like collates all three of the old games, and if that sells well, we'll make a new one. And it didn't, so they didn't,
Oh,
which is a bummer because I'd love to see those characters in the new. And they're still in like Marvel vs. Capcom and stuff, but still, I'd love to see those characters again.
me too. I mean, after watching this, they're all so unique and wacky. I would love to play a new updated Darkstalkers game. And I typed in like Darkstalkers PS4 on Amazon to see if there was something from the past few years. And I was disappointed that I couldn't find anything.
I will say their personalities would not match up. They took many liberties, to put it lightly.
I see.
And I think I've made a bit of a reputation of myself for harping on this show. I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised. It actually holds up kind of well.
I thought this was really fun. I enjoyed this one. Like I enjoyed the last one, but I was very much aware that it wasn't that good, and it was just me kind of finding stuff to enjoy about it. But this
Right.
I thought genuinely a pretty decent series, except in
Yeah.
terms of animation, which was absolutely hideous.
Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page there. I think and I especially, that's what I like really stick my feet in. Because, like I was saying, the Darkstalkers games are gorgeous. That is some of my favorite sprite work ever. And they make almost all of these characters look absolutely hideous.
They really do. Like again, it's very inconsistent. I know that was the style at the time. But whereas Street Fighter was inconsistent in its style, this is just inconsistent generally because like between scenes people's faces completely change. I was watching one of the episodes and like Morrigan goes from looking completely different to the point where in the next scene she looked like a different character. They're just, and
I will.
everyone's all over the place when they turn their heads. It's
Oh,
like there's
completely.
there's missing frames and people are just in different places and they're moving weirdly. um
I
Horrible,
think
ugly animation.
the villains get kind of the better end of the stick because they can afford to look pretty gross. But they try to add these like sympathetic features to like Talbane and Bigfoot and Riku and it just does not work and I hate the way they all look.
So is have they made certain characters from the games into villains in this series who weren't
So
villains?
Darkstalkers, it's different from Street Fighter, whereas in the games, a lot of the characters aren't even really on a binary. They're monsters who do monster things, but have their own agenda. So it's hard to say, oh, this one's a good guy in any kind of binary, like good versus evil.
I see.
So you could definitely make a case where it's like this one's definitely nicer, but a lot of them just kind of do their own thing. So it's a little interesting to see, and they pretty much pick the intuitive. This would be a good one. This would be a bad one.
I guess yeah, their choices generally seem to line up. I think the characters they choose to be the villains do look like villains.
Yeah. I'd say like Morgan is like the farthest fetched, whereas like in the game, she's very much I kind of just want to do my own thing and lure men. I don't really have any big desires for world domination. Where she is like the Uber villain of Uber super villains in this show.
Yes. I mean, I called it the Morrigan Show because she seems to get the most screen time of any character.
And she's arguably the mascot. Dimitri was intended to be the main character, but Morgan just eclipsed him in popularity for reasons that I think are apparent. To the point that she's in all the crossovers and stuff, where that could have very much been Dimitri in a very adjacent timeline.
Why not ignore those slackers? We don't need them. We can take care of the humans ourselves.
No! That's not the plan. First the older races, then the humans. We stick to the plan. But there is one other. A human. A powerful sorcerer. Felicia was near his tower when...
When you lost her?
When she disappeared. If I find him, I think I will find her.
Dimitri was the worst character in this. He was so irritating every time he showed up. Just like, why are you in charge? You're a bumbling imbecile.
And that's a shame. He's a very suave, impressive character in the games. He has a very famous move. His strongest move. It's established they go with a version of vampires in the games that can only suck blood from the opposite gender. So he has a magic spell that transforms your opponent into a maiden, and it's a different design for every single character. So you get like a maiden Lord Raptor and a maiden Bigfoot, specifically made for that move, so he can drink their blood. It's awesome, and I can't see that this Dimitri holding up to that same standard.
That is a really cool feature. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, he's very disappointing in this. Is I've forgotten his name, but like lead villain, is he in the game?
Yes, he's the final boss of the first game, Pyron.
Okay, I thought he might be.
So they did roll with that. Though I would argue Jada, who's the final boss of the second game, is a way more impressive design and villain within that continuity.
I mean, all the characters kind of made an impression on me in this series, and I like how they sort of space them out, and you get a different episode for each one.
Mm-hmm. I have something to say about just about all of them. If there's anyone you want to start with,
I like Felicia.
She's great. She's also very, very famous, again, for apparent reasons, and they actually kind of capture her pretty well. I think they had to. Is she ever a nun in this show? I haven't seen every episode recently.
None of the ones that I watched had her as a nun. No, they just had like the.
I think that's an element they had to remove, probably for religious connotations, because in the game she's a nun who moonlights as a cat girl musical performer.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she wasn't a nun at any point. Does she disguise herself as a nun? Or am I confusing this with the film The Nun, which I watched the other night? Maybe I'm blurring the lines of reality slightly there.
Little column A, little column B.
But I did like her. Good vocal performance. Like really good character design, but the animation just wasn't capable of dealing with it.
I wish it's a very busy design, and they did not have the budget to animate all those bells and whistles, whereas in the she has her tail and all her tassels.
Don't like her relationship with that boy. Made me uncomfortable.
I hate that they felt the need to. Of course, they felt the need to add in a boy, which not a fan.
That first scene where it cuts to she's trying to find the sorcerer and she transforms into her cat form, and then it just cuts to a shot of the boy's bed. And he was last seen taking the cat inside, and I was watching it thinking, oh God, please don't be in the bed with the child. Thank God that was not the case, but
yeah,
there was something unsettling about like a very scantily clad Catwoman being around this like 8-year-old boy and living in his bedroom. And I thought, not sure this is a good choice.
Yeah. I'm not even sure what Felicia's like supposed to be as far as horror like I'm like, oh yeah, vampire, yeah, zombie, sure, mummy, totally. I don't know what a cat lady, like what place that has in all this.
Yeah.
My costume was out of date? Out of date? How dare they? It's a tour of cats, not My Fair Lady. Maybe showbiz was a bad idea.
My personal favorite character from the games is Victor, so I wonder what you think of him in this show.
Oh, I thought he was great. He was he brought a smile to my face when when he goes back to the like the mansion to meet Papa, and then he walks in and he's like, "Papa, I'm home," and there's just a corpse in a chair.
Oh yeah.
That was a
As
great
dark
gag.
as dark as that is, he's arguably darker in the games. His like special move is the ghost of his professor, Papa Creator, manifesting in a bolt of lightning surrounding him and controlling him.
Oh, that's
Very
really dark.
cool.
I like the
Yeah.
Igor guy that greets him as well.
Ah, yes,
He's just in his
yes.
like Bavarian shorts, but he's still working for the corpse. I liked that as a touch. Like, you think he seems like a perfectly sane, reasonable butler type character, and then he's just like, "Well, of course I can show you through to your father, my good man."
What's so funny?
Oh, nothing. You know, my family, the Schmendricks, have served the Baron since you were born. In fact, we still do.
Still? You mean?
Yeah, he is here. Baron von Guggenheim.
I'm home, Papa.
I wish, like with a lot of them, they do kind of segregate him to just be the tough guy as far as fighting goes. Whereas again, in the games, he's very, very malleable. They play with him being a golem and having like expandable limbs and like removable body parts. If you hit him particularly hard, the lid of his head like loosens and some of his brain is exposed. And you really don't get much of that in the show because he's very much this shit brick house.
Yeah, but he was good though. I did like
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else was on the good guy team. Fishman.
Ugh. I detest his design in this so much.
Did you notice he was Scott McNeil doing that same voice that he used on Ken in Street
Ken?
Fighter?
And it's the same voice he lends to another Capcom character in the Mega Man show, that being Proto Man.
And he also used
Yeah.
that voice in something we watched recently. I can't remember which one it was now. But yeah, Scott McNeil uses that voice on the same type of character in everything.
He's also Lord Raptor in this show.
He is. I really liked his Lord Raptor performance.
Lord Raptor's hard to knock in this, as silly as he is. He's exactly as he should be.
Oh, good.
I'm hot. I'm here. I'm ready. Love me. Lord Rector, opening egg for the Grateful Dead. I'm the toast of the town. I'm the idol of millions. I'm still unemployed. What? I said no to Lord Rector. I tried, babe. I really tried. Not hard enough. Sweetie, I work hard for my 90%, but they don't want you. Your old hat. You need something new. A gimmick. Oh, a gimmick. A gimmick? How many other bloody zombies play rock?
Another one. That's the only casting that carried into the English dub of the Darkstalkers anime. They were that impressed by Scott McNeil, Lord Raptor.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. I'm glad. I always
Yeah.
enjoy seeing Scott McNeil show up in stuff. He's very versatile.
Oh, totally.
I know I've just said that he uses the same voice for like 5 different characters, and that is true. But, you know, he was very much in demand in the 90s, and he's in pretty much everything. So I think we can excuse that.
Yeah. Let's see. We also had Anakaris, who they made the bizarre choice of speaking exclusively in non sequiturs.
Which one is that?
He's the mummy.
Oh, I liked him as well. I love how he woke up and he just couldn't remember anything, and he was like, "What is my name again?"
And when you put it that way, the choice makes a little more sense, because I genuinely was always like, so wait, why is he talking like this? But when you phrase it that way.
I enjoyed it. I like that design. I like that he just wakes up and he's kind of just got memory loss. That was
He's a
nice touch.
very cool looking character.
I am Pharaoh of all of Egypt. Grapefruits and kumquats tremble at my passing. A kingdom for a camel, one hump or two. Ooh, pretty horn. By the light of the great god Rudamega, you are mine. Toot toot.
But which was your favorite out of these three?
I get begrudgingly Darkstalkers because I shit talk that one a lot, but it did somehow end up being the most coherent. When like I walked in liking Mortal Kombat best, but hearing it from like your perspective, not to say like, oh, you ruined it for me, but realizing how little sense it did make to someone who didn't get the lore the way I did, I was like, oh yeah, that is seriously kind of messed up that they just threw you in. So I think we're pretty much on the same page there.
It's interesting analyzing these ones because I feel like from a writing perspective, Mortal Kombat was possibly the best one in terms of just like how well the characters were written. It had a more sort of serious tone. Everyone had the backstory and the flashbacks, and I know I complained about those, but at least there's, everyone's got their own sort of little arc throughout this plot.
I'd argue a little.
A little, yeah.
I'd argue. Sorry, go on. I'm sorry. I'd argue.
I guess I'd have to watch them all to know completely, and I've not really much inclination to do that. But it seemed like people were trying, and they wanted this to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
In its own way. Street Fighter is just like nonsense, but
yeah,
I enjoyed it for what it was, and I think it's one of those ones that's kind of goofy and cheesy, and I just got such a kick out of M. Bison in general that I was happy to watch. Yeah, I was happy to watch a couple more episodes of that. Darkstalkers is the one that I don't even know if you would put it together and think, oh, this is based on a fighting game in the way that you would with the others.
Yeah.
In and of itself, it stood on its own quite well. It's the most sort of standard, like 90s cartoon, if you will, of the three of them.
And I think it lends itself well that not nearly as many people know Darkstalkers as like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. So you could easily just turn that on and think it's an innocuous kid show. And the writing kind of helps lift that up in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly with the kid. That's very 90s. Much more so than the other two. So, yeah. As for my favorite one, I'm not entirely sure. It's definitely not Mortal Kombat. I don't know if in all good faith I can say Street Fighter, but it might be Street Fighter.
I mean, live your last life.
Because I did kind of enjoy that. I think again that's probably because of like the G.I. Joe vibes, and because I've watched so much G.I. Joe in my time that I could easily set that in the same universe. And it felt like a sort of spiritual successor in some ways. And the animation isn't that terrible. It's interesting. It's certainly varied and wild and inconsistent, but it never looks really bad. Whereas Darkstalkers, as much as I enjoyed it, was terrible to look at, and just just they did not have the budget to do that.
See, I like your rundown because I think they all just kind of fill each other's gaps. We've got one that tried really hard with story but just didn't quite hold up. One that like tries really well with atmosphere but isn't missing, but kind of has the wrong pieces, and one that like manages to look pretty good but didn't really like pull in story very well. So we kind of have like an Ouroboros equilibrium with these three.
We do. A horrific homunculus of fighting game adaptions.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page as you. Like Mortal Kombat, I don't think like you were praising the backstories, and I agree with you to some extent, but I also feel, giving a soap operatic, oh, my wife left me before Mortal Kombat is necessarily a good thing. You know, it's quality and quantity. Street Fighter, like, I see where you're coming from. Absolutely, those points are just made there, but it gave me whiplash. Like, I needed to take a nap after watching.
Interesting.
It was just something about it really did not jive with me and exhausted me a bit. And then Darkstalkers, as much as I think Darkstalkers frustrates me a bit because as an IP, it's less popular than Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, and I wish those games got more attention. And I feel like this show might turn some people off of it, but ultimately, it's really not so bad. Sorry.
Yeah. None of them are great. None of them are that terrible.